are cookies for everyone, just because we're Montara and that's what we do. Calling the meeting of October 3rd, 2019 to order at, oh dear, 7:35. So, call to order, we're ordered? Roll call.
We are ordered.
Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Marshall?
Here.
Director Slater-Carter?
Present.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Lohman?
Here.
President's statement. Welcome to October. As everyone knows, Montara and Moss Beach have the best Halloween.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll see photos of it on Facebook and other things, because some of the houses here are world quality. Just amazing. We have no public hearing. We'll move into oral comments. I see two. One is, the first one I got is curbside compost pickup from Justine Cable, but that will be on our agenda, so that's not public comment. And then Greg Diegas, subject minutes of last meeting, Christolog, which I don't quite understand. Is that an agenda item?
No.
I didn't think so.
The minutes are an agenda item.
The minutes are, but they're on consent agenda, but the subject is Christolog, so
He's in the minutes.
he is in the minutes. So we will move to the consent agenda and we will pull the minutes for discussion, which leaves us with the, we're going to pull the minutes for September 19. That's last meeting. Okay, we will leave on the consent agenda approval for September 12th, approval of financial statements for August 2019, approval of warrants for October 1, 2019, SAM flow report for August 2019, monthly review of current investment portfolio, connection permit applications received, monthly water production report for August 2019, rain report, solar energy report, monthly public agency retirement service report for July 2019, review and possible action appointing acting district council, that's a resolution 1663, review and possible action concerning proposed sale of surplus Ford F-250, that's resolution 1664. Tracy, thank you. And review and possible action approving consulting agreement with Singer Associates. Do we have a motion?
So moved for approval.
I second the motion.
Motion by Rick, second by Jim Harvey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Let's do the public comment on the minutes of September 19th, 2019 from Greg Diegas.
Greg Diegas, Montara. By a remarkable coincidence, as part of my research project on growth, sustainability, and infrastructure, I had lunch the day of the last meeting with David Byers, who sails a boat out of my yacht club and is also the attorney for Big Wave, which was on the agenda that night. And while it wasn't intended to be a topic of discussion when I met with him, because I have a bunch of other growth and development and legal issues I was trying to discuss, he volunteered that he had been that attorney and had sued Montara, I think he said 4 times, and won. And then somewhere in the conversation,
I wouldn't exactly call it winning, but
okay, well, that's what he said.
He's an attorney, so he can make his own statements.
But he said out of the blue, you know, you really ought to consider consolidation. And he gave his pitch about economies of scale. And I remember thinking, I wonder why he brought that up. And so that night, Chris Tholog walks in, and I see in the minutes after the meeting that there's an extremely well-written and very long paper arguing for the benefits of consolidation, which I find specious, inaccurate, wrong, but it's out there in public record and apparently been handed to a bunch of other agencies and people.
You can look at the CC list at the bottom of the letter,
Right.
yes.
So I view this as a dangerous thing that needs to be replied to, both to everybody he sent it to and to him and to the public at large through whatever means we have, Coastside Buzz, Half Moon Bay Review, whatever. I think we ought to be replying to that, and I'm glad to help prepare a counter argument, especially because I love arguing with buyers. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I comment real quick? Is that legal?
20 seconds.
You do. I'm the LAFCO rep, and for us out here on the
Oh, you
special
get 30
districts.
now.
And there is a perfectly normal and legal LAFCO consolidation process. It ends up with the different communities voting whether they want to or not. No consolidator so far has ever recommended using the legal process. They all want to go outside the process and avoid voting by the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along to old business, there is
Can we
none.
vote on the? Yes.
Oh.
On the minutes,
We did.
the ones that were pulled?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's vote on the minutes. Thank you, Christine.
Second?
Okay, Scott, motion by Scott, second by Rick. All those in favor of approving the minutes of September 19, 2019, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, motion carries unanimously. There still is no old business. New business, review and possible action concerning review of Recology 2021 solid waste rate increase.
It should be 2020 solid waste. rate.
2020, I'm sorry, did I say?
So every year around this time, we get actually the financial information from Recology that is required to show and calculate the rate increase for the next year. There's a formula in our franchise agreement that is applied. And so this year, it's actually interesting because Recology's found some saving methods, and Chris is here, she can elaborate on this. And there is not really a specific rate increase that Recology is asking for next year. But there is still a catch-up, since we have a 6% cap in the contract. There's a catch-up from last year of 4.71% that would kick in 2020.
Okay, could you, while we're on that, could you explain a little bit more for the camera and the public what a catch-up is?
So the contract essentially limits the annual rate increase to 6% per year. If the formula shows that there is a larger increase that's actually calculated, only a 6% increase is implemented anyways in this year, and the remaining increase is banked until it can be applied within the 6% range. And that is what we're seeing essentially this next fiscal year. I think I'm gonna, Chris, I'm assuming you want to talk a little bit about this as well. There is some actually interesting news that we all should be aware about the recycling market. There's definitely some loss in revenue that the solid waste haulers see. And on top of that, Recology is actually, unlike other waste disposal companies, Recology is continuing to not put recycling in the landfill, which is what others are going for right now because there's no money in the market. So what we actually do here is we review the calculations, look at the financial statements, and that is what Mason Associates, our accountant firm, is doing. So Peter is here, and Peter presented is going to present a brief review of the suggested rate increase and what he sees in the paperwork. What we're asking for ultimately is the authorization to prepare and distribute a Prop 218 notice. We have this problem every year. There's a 45-day notification period that we have to adhere to, and we're tasked with figuring out how to implement this rate increase by January 1. So that's not really working. So we're it's working, but we hold every year a public hearing in January setting rates starting January 1. So we're looking to do the same. So we're looking to authorize the distribution of a Prop 218 notice and then notice a public hearing for January 16, 2020. That I suggest that Peter tells us what he sees in the numbers before we can ask Chris.
Good evening. As Clement said, we apply procedures to the worksheet that is provided to us by the Recology folks. Really what that entails is going over the agreement and ensuring that we are in fact in an index-based year adjustment, and we are. Last year was a cost-based increase, and as Clement says, we reached the cap of 6%. That amount that was banked was approximately $77,000, is just held in suspense until it can be applied. And as Clement further said, we saw a reduction in overall cost based on the 19 and 20, and that really is mainly in the reduction of the transfer costs. Everything else is applied by CPI, so those costs all increase by their various CPI counterparts. And as a part of the testing, we go through and we independently verify those BLS CPI increases and make sure that they were applied correctly, go through the worksheets and recalculate all the items, really just verify that there's no incorrect calculations, formulas within. It's a large Excel-based document, so we go through and make sure that those calculations are all being handled properly. We go back through and also confirm what the overage amount was last year, and then at that point say that yes, all of the factors were applied correctly, and we feel confident that the methodology that was used is correct. We also say in there that this is not an audit. This is we don't apply an assurance opinion upon this, because we do not test the expenses that are within the worksheet for their expenses. We cannot. Recology has a fiscal year end of September 30th, so that just happened last week. So there's no way we're going to have audited financials for the period. So because of that, we are limited, and we don't go in and provide test-based assurance.
But Chris, you have had, Recology has had clean audits.
Yeah, and we do apply, send an audited financial statement every year.
Correct.
To Peter to Clement.
Correct.
Okay.
And we review it for reasonableness, and it's no issues there.
And we actually had in the old days Bob Potasic verifying some numbers in depth.
Penny by penny by penny.
Yes.
So I have a question. So Peter, what are you telling us here? What is your
That's
what
the
is your
calculation.
report?
The calculation.
Can you help us or not?
Yes. Well, the calculation that is provided by Recology has been recalculated, and based on the methodology that's provided within the franchise agreement, it is being followed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chris, I'm assuming you're next.
Good evening, Board. I'm Chris Porter, Gabriele, General Manager of Recology of the Coast since I was young. And a few things that have come up this year. There was a complete reversal of the recycling market. What at this time last year, we were getting paid $35 a ton for recycling. We are now paying $19.50 a ton to assure that the recycling is not landfilled.
And the high some years ago was $60 or $75 a ton?
$65 a ton. So there's been a huge reversal worldwide in the markets. And Recology is seeking new markets, both domestic and overseas. It's funny that this country is such a recycling hub, but they've closed glass plants, they've closed a lot of different plants due to pollution reasons, and so these things are being retooled now, which is good for the future, but right now we're kind of in a dilemma. Recology had a huge meeting in the last couple of days about governmental regulations and stuff, and this is something I'm very proud to say. Recology is an employee-owned company. We are pledging in 2020 $1 million of our own employee money out of my pocket to put a ballot on in San Francisco that by 2030, all packaging will have to be a minimum of 75% either recyclable or compostable. So I'm really proud of that we're putting our money where our mouth is. This is our business.
I would be happy to help in that campaign. I think that's creating markets for recycling is something that has been missing since the market started.
Well, what I'm hoping is that if this does pass, which I honestly can't understand why it wouldn't, that we on the coast side can just adopt this resolution also. As in Pacifica, we just passed an ordinance for to no longer have single-use plastic. So I'm hoping that, this will pass and we'll move forward here. What I did with Recology of the Coast, when I saw what the trend was going to be about the loss of income, I brainstormed with my management team, and what we did was, instead of bringing our recyclable material to a secondary hauler to bring it down to San Jose, I'm now hauling it myself every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. My guys are driving to San Jose, and it's much cheaper for me to do that than to have a secondary company haul it. So that's where the savings came from. So
Wow, thank your guys.
we know what the effect is on the customers. I live on the coast side, and so we attempt to do whatever we can to mitigate costs.
Thank you. And so the request, are there any, I don't see any more speakers. Sid, if you wanted to talk about compost, that's the next
It's a
item.
different one, okay, sorry.
No worries.
I put on one and two on the same speaker slip.
Oh,
Are we on one?
that's fine. We are on one right now, if you'd like to speak to that.
I'll turn it in later then.
That's fine. Tracy knows you. I'm sorry, Carlisle.
Yes, thanks. So,
filter seminar all day from 8 a.m. till 6:30, so I'm stiff. Carlisle Ann Young, 180 San Lucas Avenue, Moss Beach. Well, I'm just kind of opposed. I appreciate everything that Chris says, and I just am opposed to a rate increase simply because of the consideration of life circumstances in my case. But I've talked to several other senior people in my neighborhood in Montara and Moss Beach, see if they're coming to the meeting tonight, and they all said that, we'd rather raise awareness and try to get people to be really good citizens and maybe not buy so much packaged products and rinse your containers before you throw them into the blue bin instead of just tossing them in the gray bin, so that, like a yogurt thing, you don't want to wash it out. You have to put it in the garbage because it's got goo on it. I think it would help a lot to raise the awareness, but sounds like it's coming down the pike no matter what. But I still thought I would speak out on behalf of Peggy Emery and Lynn, her roommate, and they're back in Montara, and my neighbor on San Lucas, Carol Guion, who would rather just compost everything in her yard if she could, but obviously she can't. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
There is said a small bin rate.
I have it, but I fill it about 1/3 for the garbage.
I understand.
I fill a lot more
But,
into the blue.
but 4% of a small number is a small number. So we've got, one of the problems we had in the past was with Seacoast. They didn't raise our rates for a long time, and then they got into financial hardship. And one of the things we want to do is to keep our service providers financially healthy so that we don't have problems too. Because when they're not financially healthy, we get into other difficulties. So, and you weren't here when it was explained that the 4.71% for 2020 rate increase is a rate increase that was continued over several years. Our contract limits the rate increase in any single year to 6%. So we had to do 6% as our last rate increase, but the costs were more than that. So this is a carryover from the last one, when their other prices and their other income fell. So in a sense, not in a sense, we are definitely trying to smooth out the highs here. So we have received Mays and Associates presentation, and we need to authorize the general manager to prepare and distribute a Prop 218 notice and a notice for public hearing for January 16, 2020. Gentlemen, discussion. We should just authorize this? Do we need a vote?
Seems reasonable, if that's the plan.
Or just a straw poll? I think we need to do it.
It's a public meeting, so we're just authorizing the public meeting at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving, Clement, I hear you.
Do we need anything more? Do we need a motion for the Prop 218 notice?
Oh, yes, we do
I
on
move
that.
that we prepare and distribute a Prop 218 notice and notice a public hearing for January 16th, 2020.
I second.
I'd like to add a small amendment in that, and maybe we could discuss the next item, which is the composting, consideration of composting services, because I think if we just do a 218 notice based on the 4.71%, that does not include any additional services for composting, and I think we need to consider that and maybe figure out a way to give people. We've got a baseline for the 4.71. Clearly, we need to approve that. But if the composting goes up, I don't know, $10 a month or $5 a month or whatever it is, I think we should give folks a choice on that.
Could we go ahead and pass this one and then reopen it if we decide something on the next item?
You can just decide something separate. I think on the second item, I don't think you necessarily have to reopen. Well, I take that back. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
We gave instructions
Yeah.
to do a Prop 218 notice. We didn't tie it to anything in particular.
Okay, so we'll do a 218 notice and talk about the contents of it later. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to review and possible action concerning consideration of composting services, and we have a speaker, Justine Cable.
And Carla also.
Yes, but you're next.
Good evening. Hi, good to see you. My name is Justine Cable, and my husband, Adrian Cable, and I recently relocated to the coast. We bought our first home together here, and we're expecting soon, so we have a vested interest in this particular topic. I wanted to start with pumpkin season has arrived, and a lot of it's going to go in our landfill. The MWSD How We Protect the Environment pages state, the residents and business owners of the Montara coastal area live here because of the beauty, serenity, and sustainable lifestyle. For those reasons, the directors and staff of the Montara Water and Sanitary District value and respect the environment we enjoy by placing a high priority on recycling and ecology through our partnership with Recology of the Coast. And we strive to protect our environment for our generation and future generations. So by making one addition to our service, the coastside communities have an opportunity to divert up to 50% of compostable waste that might be currently filling our landfill. Those that are currently composting at home are only composting about 21% of that 50% of compostable items. There are items that simply cannot compost at home, such as meat scraps, paper towels, or compostable takeaway containers. And rejecting curbside compost service to the area denies a part of the community that may not currently have the means or the time to compost. So I'm talking about people that work full-time, overtime, have families to raise, live in apartments or condos, have landlords that don't allow yard composting, or restaurant workers that have to throw food away every day that could have been composted. And I've read some online comments and heard from the community that a justification to not support curbside compost pickup is because of fixed incomes. And in the city of Montara alone, we have a population of 2,909 people, an average annual income of $104,000, and a poverty rate of 3.95%, which is 115 people. The most recent U.S. Census surveyed 1,109 households. 72 of those households had someone living who was 65 years of age or older. So how did these numbers get skewed into representing the majority of the community? So I currently pay $31.07 for Recology per month. GCSD residents pay $22.02 a month for a typical 32-gallon can. And in Pacifica, which also uses Recology and has compost pickup, residents pay $33.12 a month. And in Half Moon Bay, which uses Republic Services and has compost pickup, residents pay $36.94 a month. So that small delta of money is worth the cost for current and future generations that care about a sustainable environment. And the Mid-Coast Community Council provided a report on September 11th that the Ox Mountain landfill has approximately 18 to 19 years left before it's at 100% capacity. And this landfill services all of San Mateo County. And the current approach that was voted in before has had its chance. And now the product of that mistake is that we're filling up our own landfills at a rate that's not sustainable. Now it's time to let us correct that error and try something new. And we can affect real change for the amount of the cost of a cup of coffee. And that helps the environment with this small adjustment to our service. And the MWSD can truly stand behind its environmental commitment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest. Sid. Carlisle, sorry.
forgot the other speaker's name just now, but Carlisle and Young, Moss Beach. Justine mentioned that there were 2909 residents in Montara and that only 115 of them were considered low income, but really in Moss Beach, there's quite a few more low income. And so I guess she was cherry picking the numbers because there's the whole Pillar Ridge community, and a lot of them are low income there. And of course, there's still quite a few seniors sprinkled amongst the Moss Beach residents as well. But the other thing is the technical term composting. Since we already have a big green waste bin there for composting yard waste, I think composting is kind of a generic term, and really what we're talking about is having weekly pickup of food waste that's not going to be considered garbage. In other words, meat scraps and those sort of things cannot still be compostable food waste. It still has to be separated and put in the gray bin. So a lot of the proposed savings to the Ox Mountain landfill, I'm sorry, can you tell us how many people were serving for garbage in both Moss Beach and Montara Clemens? Households?
Let's do it by households.
Okay, households I meant.
I mean, how many households in Montara and Moss Beach
We have
receiving garbage service?
I believe we have under 2,000 households.
That's around 2,000.
2,000. Okay, so therefore, the food part of that, of 2,000 households, is really negligible compared to all the cities on the other side of the peninsula that are contributing so much more to Ox Mountain than we are. It's not going to be an appreciable amount. And there's a lot of people here that have lived here a really long time. No offense, I know you haven't, but
Why are you pointing your comments at me?
well, because I'm rebutting what you had to say. So, and you just said you were a new arrival. A lot of people here already are very good global citizens as far as composting in their yards, separating out their green waste and their blue compostable plastic type items and cardboard items, and then of course the food waste. I think there may be a few, you could raise awareness and get more people to be more careful about their sorting and probably deter a lot more things going into Ox Mountain, but I really think it's not worth the weekly pickup charge to have food added to the composting, as they're saying here. And I didn't hear what the actual rate would be. I think I heard somebody kicking around $3 a week for weekly food waste pickup.
I think we need, let's not try numbers because $3 a week is $12 a month. So
yes,
we need to know what the numbers are.
But I was at the MCC meeting when Chris was there, and she said that because of health reasons, you would have to have weekly food waste pickup.
Yes.
Green waste is only every other week. So I'm good with that. And a lot of people, as I said before at the MCC, there's neighbors that come as far away as the other part of Moss Beach to bring my goats their food scraps, vegetable scraps, I should say, and neighbors in the yard, they bring their leftover clippings from salads and fruits and all sorts of things, and my goats are very appreciative. So I'm sure there's quite a few others in the vicinity that would appreciate a little treat like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Sure.
Chris.
All right, Chris.
Yes, go ahead.
Chris Porter again. As I previously said, we had a large governmental meeting of all of Recology, and what came out of this meeting is that as of the year 2024, Montara will have to have composting. Well, AB 1383 gives no exceptions. So we will have to have composting food composting beginning 2024. And we will have to pass an ordinance by 2022 stating that we will be doing composting. To begin adding food to the green waste, Recology would need 1 year lead time to get that done. Because we're talking about trucks, we're talking about changes in routes, we're talking about quite a lot of different things. So, I talked to Clemens about that late this afternoon. We went back and forth, and one thing we thought was, I did speak to the governmental people and said, you know, I'd like to see some type of boilerplate ordinance that I could bring to Clemens and we could look at, but there'll have to be discussion, be it a public hearing, some sort of whatever, whatever the board decides as to when you would want to implement this, and then we'll have to move backwards from that date to go forward. What the costs will be, I can't tell you right now, again, because there's a lot of different things, and it would be the wisest move for the district and cheapest is we would move at the same time with El Granada, because you have service 2.5 days a week, El Granada has service 2.5 days a week, and to cover the cost, it would be much cheaper if we all did it at the same time. So I think this would be a discussion maybe both districts could have together, Clemens and Chuck and myself, and then come forward to the boards and get input from the boards on exactly what you want to do. But we were able to have waivers previously because of the composting that was being done in town. Well, AB 1383 does not give any type of waivers for that, and there are significant fines to the districts if we do not have the ordinance in place by 2022, January 2022, and have the composting in place by 2024.
Well, it sounds like a project then.
Yes.
And you told me that the discussion in the trash and waste hauling and recycling community is that Allied Waste takes all of their compost and puts it in the landfill?
Their composting is going in the landfill, but supposedly it is going into an area to help mitigate the trash and to lengthen the life of the landfill. So that is a positive move.
Okay.
Physically, how would this be, say, green waste and composting? We get the 4 bins of green waste. We would just throw everything into the green waste?
We have the 196, right now you have the 196, and you're allowed to put out an additional 30. So what we would do is we would just have the 196, and it would be picked up every week. Once you start adding food into the green waste, the big one. Once you start adding food in, it's mandatory that you have weekly service for health reasons.
Okay, we would just throw it all in the same
You
bin.
throw it all in together.
What if we want to compost at home anyway, which is what we're doing?
What the ratio?
We can still throw it in our gardens and all that stuff, can't we? They aren't going to come out and inspect
You
it.
could, but again, the program has got to be in place.
The program has to be
Right,
in place.
exactly.
700s.
Okay, thank you.
I would like
Okay.
to request that we get council to give us a read on what the legal requirements are.
Exactly what I have written down right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
I would also say that it makes sense to coordinate it with El Granada and do everything at the same time, rather than us trying to jump ahead. And it sounds like if we're going to do it, it's mandatory. We would just coordinate the whole thing with El Granada and everybody do it at the same time. Get the ordinances in place appropriately, as Chris is saying.
Right.
So, it sounds like we have to do it eventually, so let's just get the process going with El Granada and see, set up cut-up dates and cut-over dates and stuff like that.
Is it possible, one of the people who spoke at the Mid-Coast Council was driving her compostable stuff to South City, and leaving it at a relative's home so it could get composted. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be possible to have a kind of a bin or something that people might be able to put, but the compostable stuff in if they wanted to bring it just down locally and have it on our district. I don't know if that would be a management problem, Clemens, or not, and then have it picked up on a weekly basis.
Well,
And
I
it
ran.
could give us a gauge of this. I mean,
I ran a lot of scenarios because when we had these meetings, they were one-on-one with our top people. And I ran our scenarios completely by them of what we've been doing and what's been going on. And, how we've been reporting to the state and stuff. And AB 1383 cuts that off as of 2024.
okay, so in the meantime, you're saying that it would not be feasible for us to put in some sort of interim process for folks who wanted to participate?
We'd have to talk about it. We'd have to talk about, pickup could be a problem. We'd have to talk about it, and again, there'd be a fee for that.
I understand.
So, I think I personally would rather move forward on everything when the board and the public decides than to, be piecemeal right now.
Right. I think the other thing I'd like to see after the Mid-Coast Council discussion, I went online and looked at what can be put into the commercial compost. And I heard some representations there that made me very concerned. As somebody who has been composting for 40-some years, with a job, full-time, with children, more than full-time, and still composting, it struck me that some of the, if I were going to be using commercial compost, while I don't mind using steer manure or chicken manure, I would not want to use a compost material that had human biological waste in it.
Human waste cannot go in composting. Absolutely,
I had
no.
heard somebody say that
No.
disposable diapers could go
No,
in, and
no.
paper towels, and I wouldn't even want paper towels.
Paper
because
towels can.
But again, there's, what were they used to clean up is my concern. Scott and I have had many discussions about recycled water and the drugs that can't be taken out of recycled water, for instance. And the human biological stuff that gets into groundwater systems and so on is a huge concern. So
May I also say, pumpkins cannot go into composting. Pumpkins.
we've had that discussion.
Pumpkins
that
cannot
argument.
go into composting, just like palm tree leaves cannot go into composting.
Pumpkins go into goats.
That's right.
Pumpkins go to the ghosts, yes.
Pumpkins
Goats.
decompose in my yard just fine.
Yeah,
And sometimes we get new pumpkins out of it.
you get a new little pumpkin.
Yeah, it's great.
But I mean, it's kind of funny, certain foods that you would think definitely would fit into composting. I know apples definitely can go into composting. There's always a lot of apples at this time of the year. So, anyway, this information just, I just was able to share it with Clemens today, and I wish we would have had a little time to make more of a presentation. But I would be happy to take your new attorney's number and
Miss Christine Fitzgerald.
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. And hook you up with our people so, to get all of the information that you need to make a presentation to the board.
I would appreciate that, and why don't you and I meet and talk about perhaps some interim alternatives if there
Absolutely.
are any. If there are none, I'm sure Sid could find some master composters to come and talk to us too.
The public hearing, is that just going to be in this room? Or
Yeah.
is it going to be a bigger meeting where we
Well-
can raise awareness and discuss it more in depth as a public and not just the board?
And maybe we should talk about having a special workshop on it. We typically, our 218 hearings are simply very low key, and we count
That's what I thought.
the ballots we've received, and if people are concerned, they show up, but generally it doesn't fill this room. If we wanted to do,
I would like to see Sustainable San Mateo County get involved and educate the public more, because they have great programming.
they have very good programs, and yeah, I think that would be very useful. But perhaps we could schedule something on a Saturday and find a space. Maybe we could work with the hostel next door, which has a larger space, and we could just have a workshop on it.
Madam President, may I make a suggestion that these two items be separate? So
them separate.
the
Well,
rate,
okay.
the rate application, the 218 notice is one item, but I think the composting and how we're going to go forward and what are going to be our dates and things like that, I think that needs to be a separate discussion,
Okay,
in
and
my humble
Do you
opinion.
think when this, to use one of Greg's terms, when this comes about in 2024, there will be more economies of scale on this kind of thing to help keep the costs down? You can't guess. I would
But
not-
I personally, as I always have done, will do everything I can within my company, which works with the district to keep the costs down.
And you have, and you've done a good job. At some point, some numbers were raised that said that we have significant cost differences between us and Granada and Pacifica.
With the,
And I'd love to have those addressed,
Well,
so that we can make sense of those for our public.
Clemens and I discussed that today. The main reason is the commercial income. I mean, El Granada has $300,000 more commercial revenue than Montara.
So that goes into.
That offsets the residential rates. And
Okay.
Pacifica has 5 times more than that.
So essentially, the commercial underwrites the residential
Yes.
rates.
We need more industry.
We need a Costco here.
There we go. Problem solved. Put that on the agenda.
A multi-story complex with Walmart, Costco.
Trader
Hikari.
Joe's,
Indian oil
that's
derrick.
been on next door a lot, Trader Joe's.
Nice ocean. Well,
Yeah, I don't, if Trader Joe's is right there in South City, I doubt if they'd put one just in Pacifica. And John Lynch and I spent.
No, in Montara.
Well, John Lynch and I and others in this community spent almost a year collecting signatures to get a Trader Joe's in Half Moon Bay, and Trader Joe's said, no, we don't have the right, you don't have the right demographics. There was an article on it, and so we fortunately got a new leaf market. So that the eyesore of a building in Half Moon Bay didn't stay an eyesore, but I don't think Trader Joe's would be interested, just knowing demographics. Anyway, do we have any more comments from the board?
May I have authorization from you to continue to work with Clements and get information together and work with
Christine, and I'd like to stay
Justine.
involved on that too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports. Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side meetings. I missed the last meeting, so that would
Got an
be,
agenda here. Good old Sam. Really the big item, Sam has been changing the medical, vision, and dental plans for all the representative and unrepresentative employees. They're switching over to one that has, better service. And that was really the big agenda item, was just discussing that and authorizing it. So, that was it
Okay.
for Sam.
okay, Mid-Coast Community Council. I have not been paying close attention. However, an item that has been of interest at Mid-Coast Community Council, and so I will report on it, and everybody has seen it probably, is that little piece of roadside that's failing on Highway 1. And the Caltrans has started work, and they're going to be shifting that curve inland. So be prepared for traffic stops. And the other is that there was a effort to try and get an underground tunnel at Gray Whale Cove. Caltrans has decided to put in a stoplight. And
With a negative deck.
with a negative deck.
Like there will be no influence on the coast.
Right. So that's what's going on with Caltrans CSDA.
No meetings. There will be one at the end of this month, so our November meeting, I'll have a report on that. On LAFCO, there was a meeting. We had the two typical items of a house or a building that was outside of a service area, and it was allowed to be merged into the local districts. That happens pretty much every month. They voted on the new updated municipal service reviews and sphere of influence. You may recall that our board wrote up an extensive letter, multiple suggestions, basically saying we don't think bigger is always better, local control is better. No other agency submitted a letter. There was agency who submitted a letter to LAFCO saying, thank you so very much for keeping us in the loop. You're doing a great job. The net result was that LAFCO added one word of, and at this point, I was a little perturbed and forgot what unique. In one of the pages of all those documents, they added the word unique. And that was the only change that happened on the entire thing. They authorized, again, since they're living in the San Mateo County buildings, there is the agreement for payment of sharing office space, supplies, and stuff like that. And then they approved the standard budget for next year that was tweaked up just a little bit. I'll be going to the California meeting of all LAFCOs at the end of this month, and unfortunately I will miss the Montara Halloween. And so that's the sacrifice I'm making for my community.
You know, that's deeply
paid for by
appreciated.
LAFCO, not by us here. So that's pretty much it for LAFCO.
Okay, attorney's report, and since we just approved appointing our acting, Christine Fitzgerald as our acting district counsel. We need to change that from Sugar to Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam President.
Report.
Thank you for the vote, and I have no report at this time.
Okay, director's reports. Okay, general manager's report.
Nothing in addition to the written.
Okay, future agendas, I have added recology, composting plus green waste, so we can keep that as a, at least a reportable item.
Just one quick comment. We got letters from Kaiser saying flu shots are now available. The big season starts in November, so it's good to get your flu shots. So everybody go get flu shots. For all those who have caught the community cold, that's a warning.
Thank you. Let's recess this and convene in closed session. And thank you, everybody who attended.